Hey, what's up guys? This is the new Nokia 7.2 by HMD Global. Ever since they acquired the Nokia brand, HMD has been using it to try and shake up the mid-range smartphone scene. But those kind of phones are getting so good these days. Can the 7.2 pull its weight? I'm Will for GSM Arena, and let's find out in our full review. The Nokia 7.2 is a mid-range phone that's been upgraded over the last model with a quad-bare main camera, an ultra-wide cam, and a large 6.3-inch LCD screen. Plus, it's a part of the Android One program, so it'll get guaranteed software updates. The phone is built of frosted Gorilla Glass with a polymer composite frame. The frame is rounded and has a plasticky sort of feel, almost as if there was a case on the phone. Our Nokia 7.2 is in the charcoal color, and the frosted matte finish gives it a dark, conservative look. It's a color scheme Batman would be proud of. Of course, there are more colorful options out there if you're looking for that. One major difference from previous Nokia phones is that the cameras are housed within a round camera bump, like the old Moto style. Below that sits the fingerprint scanner. The scanner is pretty accurate to wake up the phone, though I'm not a huge fan of the placement. It feels a little too low for my finger, which naturally wants to touch the cameras instead. Still, I'd rather use the fingerprint reader than the face unlock option, which on top of being less secure, is pretty slow. Let's go more in depth with the Nokia 7.2's screen. It's a tall 6.3-inch IPS LCD with a 1080p resolution, and a water drop notch cutout for the selfie cam. This screen is alright, but not the best LCD we've seen. Sharpness is good at 400 ppi. However, contrast leaves more to be desired, and color accuracy is poor, with a strong tendency towards bluish. Also, the panel is supposed to be HDR10 compliant, but we weren't able to get HDR content to run from YouTube or Netflix. Brightness is decent though, at 500 nits maximum with a slider, and a boost of up to 585 nits in auto mode when you're out in the sun. And there's an automatic white balance feature that can change the rendition of whites on the screen based on the ambient lighting. An impressive feature is the notification LED, which is built into the power button. It only glows white, but is still nice to have, and kind of mesmerizing. The Nokia 7.2 has a single bottom-firing loudspeaker, and it earned a very good rating in our loudness test. Sound quality isn't great though, with muffled highs and barely any bass. I was glad to see a 3.5mm jack here for headphones, and there's support for FM radio too. Sound quality with headphones is decent, with good accuracy and stereo separation, but volume levels are disappointing. You get either 64 or 128 gigs of internal storage on the Nokia 7.2, but this is expandable, and you can fit a microSD card into the tray along with 2 SIM cards. As part of the Android One program, the Nokia 7.2 runs basically stock Android 9 Pie, and should be among the first devices to get new security updates. Overall, the interface is quite clean and feels snappy. Most of the functions, such as the gallery and the music player, are taken care of by Google's default apps. One thing I don't like though is that you need a long swipe up to access the app drawer. A shorter swipe will open the task switcher. By default, navigation is done with Google's pill setup. Flicking the pill switches between recent apps, and sliding it and holding will let you scroll through the task switcher. Tapping the back arrow goes back, and tapping the pill takes you home. Directly opposite the power button, on the left side of the phone, is a dedicated Google Assistant key. It's not remappable, but you can turn it off if you want to. Under the hood of the Nokia 7.2 was a Snapdragon 660 chipset, which was all the rage amongst mid-range phones 2 years ago. These days, there are newer, more efficient chipset options readily available. Don't get me wrong, performance isn't bad here, and you can run plenty of games without slowdowns. But in such a competitive market, it's a strange move to release a phone that hits the bottom of the performance charts. The Nokia 7.2 is powered by a 3500 mAh battery, an upgrade over the Nokia 7.1's 3060 mAh. However, overall battery life wasn't impressive. It scored an endurance rating of 69 hours in our proprietary tests. It's disappointing compared to other mid-rangers these days that are scoring 100+ hours. The phone comes bundled with a modest 10-watt charger, and charging speed is nothing exciting. We were able to get from 0 to 33% charge in half an hour. Now onto the Nokia 7.2's triple cameras. There's a 48-megapixel main cam with a quad-bare sensor, an 8-megapixel ultra-wide cam, and a depth sensor for portrait mode. Daylight images come out in 12 megapixels, and quality is a bit disappointing. Detail is decent, but there's a fair share of noise, and dynamic range isn't great. Also, the colors are a bit off, with a noticeable green tint. The ultra-wide-angle cam captures okay detail, and you get the advantage of a wider field of view, but the output is grainy and noisy. Colors are tinted towards magenta this time, and there's limited dynamic range. Portrait shots on the Nokia 7.2 aren't too bad. The quality is similar to that of the regular photos, but you generally come out with good subject isolation, even with fairly complex backgrounds. Backlit scenes do introduce some problems in exposure with the subject's face, so keep that in mind. Moving on to low-light photography. We didn't have high hopes here, but actually compared to other phones in this class, the Nokia 7.2 didn't do too bad. Detail is decently well preserved, and the noise level is par for the course. Color retention and dynamic range, however, are nothing to write home about. Switching on night mode will help those a bit, preserving some extra color and tweaking the highlights and shadows as well. However, night mode shots are softer and have less overall detail. Low-light shots out of the ultra-wide cam are very noisy and nothing great to look at. Turning on night mode will deal with the noise, but smear away most of the detail. On the front, the Nokia 7.2 has a 20-megapixel quad-bare selfie camera, which outputs 5-megapixel photos. These have slightly muted colors and modest dynamic range, but they're still decent. Videos can be recorded with the main cam in up to 4K at 30 FPS, and in up to 1080p at 30 FPS with the ultra-wide. 4K footage contains a lot of detail, though straight lines can come out jagged, and there is quite a bit of noise. There's a bit of a cold, greenish color cast too, and dynamic range is rather narrow. The ultra-wide-angle cam's 1080p videos are low in detail, with a magenta color cast, and again, narrow dynamic range. But 1080p videos do have always-on electronic stabilization. The EIS does a good job, and these come out nicely smooth with no wobble. So that's the Nokia 7.2. You do get a nice looking build, Android One, and a headphone jack. Sadly, the list of pros here is kind of short. On the other hand, there are a lot of features which feel like a letdown. There's the mediocre LCD screen, the outdated chipset, the unimpressive cameras, and battery life which just isn't competitive these days. In such a saturated mid-range market with some real standout devices this year, the Nokia 7.2 doesn't have much going for it, besides the Nokia brand name. Unless you're a die-hard fan, you can probably skip on this one. Thanks for watching guys, and see you next time.